This is the Words of Money Podcast, Episode 6. Whew.
You're listening to the Words of Money Podcast with money enthusiast and financial literacy coach, Tess Wiggs. Each week, listen in on a 30-minute, no BS conversation, teaching us how to be smart about money, our future, and miscellaneous adult things from the minds of our brilliant expert guests and from Tess herself. Whether you're a recent graduate, young professional, or seasoned career woman still trying to figure out your money matters, you've made it to the right place. Welcome to Words and Money.
Hey y'all, we're back with another episode of the Words and Money Podcast. I'm Tess Wiggs, your host, and this week I'm bringing you back to the interviews for February. Today I'm sitting down with an amazing woman, a financial planner and advisor, Katie Waters. Katie owns Stable Waters Financial, a comprehensive financial planning firm. What she does is start at the basics and teaches you all those things you wish you would have learned from the get-go when it comes to your personal finances. She focuses on cash flow management, making sure that you have enough money to pay off your debt and budget for life and those big goals that you have, like taking a vacation, getting married, or buying a home. Then she works into the insurance and investment side of things. Katie is so knowledgeable and breaks down the financial speak into bite-sized information. In this episode, I leveraged Katie's expertise to help us figure out how to make sure we are properly insured. She calls it adulting. You know, learning how to be an adult and taking on those adult responsibilities like insuring yourself and your belonging and all that jazz. Katie walks us through which types of insurance are necessary and what ones we might want to consider for later on down the road and take a second look at. She provides us with an easy formula to make sure we are properly covered, as well as some additional tips for our policies. For you, I've created a checklist with different ladyhood scenarios you might be in at any given point in time or right now. It sums up what Katie and I discussed in this episode, so you can find out what insurance you should consider having in different areas of your life. You can find the checklist at tesswicks.com/podcast/Katie Waters. In addition, you'll hear in this episode that Katie is such an inspiration and a true giver. She has served as a volunteer on so many charitable boards, and her most recent one was holding an event this weekend, February 13th. From the interview, you can tell that this charity and event holds a great place in her heart. It's the Extra Special People organization, and Katie helps with their Big Hearts Banquet. If you live in or are around the Watkinsville, Georgia area, take a look at this great event for your Valentine's Day weekend. You can buy tickets or perhaps maybe even still volunteer. I'm not sure if they're still accepting them. And I've linked everything in the show notes so you can go there to find more information. I know that it would mean a lot to Katie. With that, we'll dive right into the show. Here is Getting Unstuck and Insured with Katie Waters. We're just going to dive right in. So I just want you to introduce yourself, who is Katie Waters, and then go into what is Stable Waters Financial all about.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how deep to go with that. So who is Katie Waters? So I am a financial planner. Not that I'm, I feel like my saying that way makes it seem like my job defines me, but oh Lord, here it goes. So, Katie Waters, I live in Athens, Georgia with my husband and our menagerie of animals, and I travel, I bake, I'm a daughter and a sister and a friend and a philanthropist. I spend a large chunk of my time doing volunteer and charity work in addition to running my practice. And my practice is Stable Waters Financial, the comprehensive financial planning firm, which means that I start with the very basics and I do an intense cash flow analysis and create budgets for people and tell them where to put their money every month. And then I look at things like investing and insurance and risk management. But I think that cash flow planning is the basis of having a really strong financial plan. And yeah, I just kind of boss people around with their money.
I love it. So break it down a little more for me, just in the sense of, a lot of people have thought about maybe, and definitely my audience has thought about, financial planner, that sounds super intense. Like I have to have a lot of money for it. Talk a little bit about what the differences are with, how does cash flow planning stand out a little bit from what most people would kind of assume just regular financial planning is?
Sure. Yeah. And, I struggle with this a lot about what to call myself and does that scare people away? Because definitely at a party when people ask you, they're just like, it shuts people down. They're like, oh God, I don't know what to do with that. So I still call myself a financial planner because a lot of my income comes from managing money, from managing assets and investments for people. But the bulk of my day-to-day work is the cash flow management. So I start off with a client and I have them do a 2-month review of what they spent money on, which sounds so fun, right? And
I'm sure everyone is so excited to do that.
Oh my God, they don't want to see it. It's very sobering. I hear that term a lot. Disgusting. People say that one. Yeah, I have them literally print out all of their statements, cash flow, bank statements, part of their homework, and go through and categorize everything. I want to see the difference between, the black hole of Starbucks and, the clothes for the kids. I want to see all the different ways that they spend money on, because that tells me what's important to them. And I want them to have a very clear picture of how they have been spending money. And then I want to have a conversation with them about what they tell me they want to do with their money, because sometimes and oftentimes all of those three things don't match up. And it's because it's so easy to spend money and you just swipe a card. Sometimes you don't even have to swipe. Sometimes you just tap. I mean, they should make us have to give blood every time we make a purchase. People would spend way less money that way, but it's so easy to just click, and one click on Amazon can get you something in 2 days. So what I do is I look at what people say they want, and I help create systems for them that they can implement into their everyday spending that makes them see what the purpose of that money is very clearly and helps them make really intentional decisions on what they spend their money on.
That's great. How do you see that affecting some of your clients?
It's funny because I have people that told me they were interested in working with me years ago. This is my 9th year in business. And it took them a couple years to come on board, but once a year they reach out to me and we just kind of talk about their situation. And on their own, they were spending in the same place. They weren't making any progress, either towards saving or traveling, things that they told me they wanted to do and that they were going to go do. And once we start working together, I see them being able to travel and being able to actually pay off debt. And I have one client who's paying off a certain credit card, and he told me a couple months ago, he said, I never thought that this not existing was a possibility. I thought I'd be here forever. You know what I mean? And now it's almost gone. And so it's just getting people unstuck. People feel stuck in their cash flow. And so I'm kind of that catalyst for change, just like a personal trainer, right?
Right.
You only go to a personal trainer when you want to make a change. You don't go to a personal trainer because you want to stay fluffy. Like, you go because you want to not be fluffy. And people come to me because they're like, man, I hate feeling like I am paycheck to paycheck, but yet I make 6 figures, right? And so sometimes people can make you see your money more clearly and make you see what you've been doing more clearly, and that will get you unstuck.
Yeah. No one wants to be fluffy in their money either.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's different. Maybe your bank account should be fluffy, but it's too lean, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to think about the imagery of that one.
Come to me to bulk up. Yeah.
Awesome. I do want to ask you some personal financy questions about your introduction to that, but I think this is a great way to kind of segue into the learning lesson of having you on the podcast, because, there's so much importance in getting your cash flow managed and everything. But, being a grown up in the world, we face the opportunity to invest our money, but also the reality of we need to have insurance. And I feel like you have expertise in that area of helping people find the right investments between insurance and investing. And when it comes to, for instance, a young woman who is living on her own, but, now has a career, what kind of insurance do you recommend for, different stages of life? What are some of the ones that are absolutely necessary and some that, maybe you could think about it, but probably not?
As far as insurance goes, for like a single 20-something professional maybe, or like an early 30s.
Yeah.
At work, you're going to have various options, right? You'll usually have health insurance unless you're a small business owner, but I can't stress enough how important it is to make a good choice with your health insurance. And I say that, but then a lot of times the ultimate decision will lie with my clients just knowing their bodies personally, but it's so tempting to go with a smaller premium and have a higher deductible because you think, oh, well, I'm taking a risk that something big won't happen this year. But you never know when something's going to happen. And so just knowing your body and knowing what's going on health-wise, paying a higher premium can sometimes save you a lot. But again, it's just knowing your health history. So at work, they'll give you some life insurance, and they can give you up to $50,000 without it being taxable as income to you. And they can give you more than that and pay for it, but then they just impute the premium on anything over $50,000 as income. Which doesn't mean a lot for people. But I see a lot of people kind of defaulting to their group life insurance as the end all be all. And for a single professional, you might not really have a need for it unless you own a home. I see so many single professionals that have a mortgage or maybe a car loan or something. And they think, well, if I die, I don't know. They haven't thought through what happens to that asset if something happens to them. And what life insurance can do in that situation is maybe you don't want a life insurance policy to cover the whole amount of the mortgage and just give someone the asset free and clear estate. It's usually their parents, right? Mm-hmm. But what a small policy can do is buy them a few months to get through the probate process, which if you don't have a will, and even if you do have a will, your estate has to go through a process called probate, right? Where the court says, this person's deceased, and then they appoint an executor if you don't have a will, or you appoint an executor through your will. And they go through the process of closing out all of your assets and all of your liabilities and disseminating them amongst beneficiaries, right? But what a small policy could do, say $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, is buy your parents time, or buy whoever is left time to either sell the house or figure out if they want to continue making payments on it. But let's say you died and you had a mortgage and you thought, well, my parents will just handle it. And you have no assets kind of backing that up, or no insurance policy to buy them time to figure out what to do with it. Basically what you're doing is letting them agree to continue on the mortgage until they figure out. And I don't know if they really signed up to pay your mortgage, and also deal with your final expenses. And obviously these things aren't fun to think about. But these are very real things that sometimes happen, and you've just got to be prepared. So the easiest solution for that is a small life insurance policy. Now, if you're single, work can provide it for you, but work insurance isn't usually portable, meaning it doesn't go with you from employer to employer. And something could happen to make you uninsurable. So it's important to kind of seek out those policies. And you can buy a cheap term insurance policy on your own with a company that you own and control for, I don't know, the length of your mortgage, maybe 30 years. And it could be very inexpensive if you're in good health. And so that's one way to just kind of say, you know what, I'm adulting. This is what adulting is. I'm taking care of my household, right? But the most important thing of insurance that people don't realize they need is long-term disability insurance, and they really skim over it when they're doing open enrollment. Usually your work will provide you with short-term disability, which covers, 6 weeks, 12 weeks if you're hurt and can't go to work. And long-term disability, some employers will provide some. It's often taxable if they pay for it 100%. And so people are like, oh, great, they're giving me 60%. I'm cool. I don't need to worry about this. Click, next screen. But what they don't stop and realize is that if they're not paying for that premium, it's taxable. And usually you end up only taking home about 45% of your gross income after taxes are taken out. And most people spend about 65% of their gross income to run their household every month. So only taking home 45. And then also the reason why you were out on disability is probably because you were injured or something. You're going to have medical expenses. That's a real quick way to park you back in your parents' garage or upstairs bedroom, and also have them help you pay for this period in your life, right? In the very basic terms, long-term disability insurance protects your income. We go through all of this education. We take out loans to provide education. We grind every day to kind of climb the ladder and better ourselves professionally to produce an income. All of that is to produce an income to fuel a lifestyle, right? And we insure our cars, and we insure our health, and we insure our houses and our belongings if we rent, and we insure our jewelry when we get, married or whatever. Why are people not paying attention to insuring their income? It is the thing that drives everything. So anyways, I could stay on that soapbox for a while. You can get an individual long-term disability policy that will complement what your work provides you and gets you back up to around 70% of your gross income back to whole or almost whole. Some employers are also offering options to where you can elect to pay part of the premium so that if that 60 or 70% gets paid out to you, it's not taxable. So I just want this to not be something people skim over in the middle of their open enrollment, because it usually does fall in the middle of the screens, right? And I want them to pay attention and say, whoa, long-term disability insurance in your head, it should trigger protect my income. And it's so, so crucial, so important.
Awesome. So just to recap, health insurance is making sure we're making good choices. And most employers provide that. And then life insurance, assuming you don't own a home or have a big auto loan, you're probably okay going with whatever is provided through work. But otherwise, with a home, with an auto loan, that's something you definitely want to look into. And then, of course, if you have a spouse or you do have kids,
absolutely,
also very important.
Yeah.
And then we have short-term and long-term disability that we don't want to overlook. Anything else? I mean, auto insurance, of course.
Yeah, you've got auto insurance. You've got renter's insurance if you're renting. So important, because the homeowner's policy that the landlord has only covers the structure. It does not include your belongings. So don't think if your apartment goes up in a blaze, they're going to cut you a nice check because they're sweet to you. But that's not going to happen. Back on the life insurance thing, yes, definitely if you have kids or whatever. And the other thing to look at, student loans, some student loans are forgivable at death, some are not, private ones especially.
Yeah, and that's probably something that recent college graduates aren't like, I wonder if my student loan is forgivable if I die.
No, they don't care. And that's the thing. Most people, I don't know why, I'm doing all of this research right now on the millennial generation. We are one of the most underinsured generations to have come through a modern era. And I don't know why it is. Our parents had insurance. My husband and I were speaking the other night. We very distinctly remember the insurance guy coming to our parents' houses. And yet the millennials have taken on this kind of anti-insurance stance. And I think it's for various reasons, but a lot of it, unfortunately, is that we're young and we feel invincible. We don't think bad things are going to happen because we're just not there. It's a lot of naivete. It's because I work in this industry that I see it a lot. I've had to help my clients file disability claims. In the past few years, I filed a handful, and the average age was about 35 to 38 years old. People don't expect to get disabled, right? And so it's hard to think about because it's a very, very adult thing to do. But you've got to look through your insurance and say, hey, am I covered? And one thing I'll tell you, so I do a cash flow analysis, right? I have them do all those expenses. And what I do is I compare it to their gross income. And I separate cash flow into 4 categories. You've got all your expenses like groceries, bills, whatever. Then you've got taxes. I look at their effective tax rate, and then I look at insurance, how much they're paying for health, auto, every type of insurance. And then I have savings, and I compare the 4 categories to kind of see if they're over, under where they should be, either geographically where they live or for their age or stage in career, income level or whatnot. But for insurance to be adequately insured, I find that people are spending anywhere between 4 on the real low end to 9% of their gross income between all of these things. So health insurance, long-term disability, auto insurance, life insurance, renter's insurance, I find that they're spending anywhere between 4 and 9, really 6 to 9%, 6% to 9% to be adequately insured. So that could be a test. Take your pay stub, circle all the insurances, and then do any ancillary policies you might have on the side, add them all up and divide it between your monthly gross income and just kind of see where you fall. That's usually a good indicator if you have enough or close.
And that's before taxes and everything.
Yeah, before taxes. So take your salary, divide it by 12, and then take whatever monthly number you have for insurance, auto, renters, whatever, add that up and divide that into your gross income or by your gross income, and you will figure it out. And if it's between 6 and 9%, then you're probably doing okay. But I find that when people come to me and they haven't looked at this or done this planning, they fall in the 2 to 4% range. So there are definitely some holes there you need to pay attention to.
That is such good, tangible, actionable advice that people can take and apply to their own personal situation. So thank you. I want to back up a little bit and just talk about you and how did you become interested in finance?
I had a professor in college, one of my very first finance classes, and I was supposed to have this 80-year-old that taught from the slides, and it was like a weed out class at the University of Georgia, and everybody made like a 2.1 in the class. I was terrified to take it, right? But I walk in on the first day, and it was this 31-year-old professor. Our professor had become ill that we were supposed to have, and he had just moved from Seattle. And his wife was an accounting professor at the same university. And he turned the class into an introduction to financial planning. And he taught us all of the things, how to take time value of money and all those core finance principles. And he taught us how to analyze mortgages and how to figure out if you need a 15 or a 30 year and how to look at interest rates and what you should do for retirement if the market performs this way. And it was amazing. And I remember very clearly early in the class, I can probably tell you where I was sitting in the 600-person class.
Wow.
I sat up straight and I was like, oh, I need to pay attention. This is adult life lessons that they never teach you. Wake up, like work really hard, right? And what happened is I became fascinated and I worked my tail off for an A in that class. It was a really tough class. And I had a group of guys and we formed a study group and we had pizza every Tuesday and we would study for like 4 hours. We worked really, really hard in that class. But he showed me that finance could be applied to real life situations. And then an opportunity arose right before I graduated to join a financial planning firm in Atlanta. And I thought, could I do that? Could I take that class and do that for people? And I did. So that's kind of where I am.
I love that you had that opportunity to be in a class like that. And that is something that, not only finance students should take, but every student should take. You were rattling off like mortgage stuff, and I'm like, I could have used that a year and a half ago so bad.
For sure. And you know what's crazy is I've never gone back to that professor and told him the impact, and I keep meaning to, but maybe I'll send him a copy of this podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, what did you learn about money growing up, or what was your first money memory?
You know, it's funny that I laughed at when I thought that this would be a question from the teasers that you sent me, because my first meeting face to face with clients, I go through kind of a psychological background. Like my first question is, how did you grow up around money and what are your earliest memories of money? That's why it just rolls off my tongue like that. And so when I saw this, I thought, no, you can't ask me that. I asked you, this isn't fair. But I put some thought into it. I don't remember ever really realizing, I don't know. I always had a very keen sense that money was necessary to purchase things. And I didn't come from a ton of money. My dad's dad died at the age of 36 with 4 kids under the age of 10. And my grandmother raised them on what life insurance he did have and Social Security. And she worked at the hardware store, and, they didn't have much money. And then on my mom's side, my grandfather retired from General Motors and drove a school bus because he loved kids, and he had like 9 grandchildren. There were 9 of us, and we all lived within a mile of each other. I mean, I lived next to my maternal grandparents, and my paternal grandparents were just a mile up the road. But I never wanted for anything. Both of my parents are like American dream, right? My dad was in the Marines, and he went to work for one of the airlines, and he's been there 30 years. And my mother worked her way up and works for a big technology company, and she's been there for, 20, 30 years on the same team. And they've gone through mergers, but they've worked very, very hard to have a good lifestyle. And we never wanted for anything, but I do remember always trying to earn money. I never remember that we were short on money, because I don't think that we were. And I think it was just expectations, but I always was squirreling away money to go buy things. I would do like chores and allowances and whatever. And recently, a year or two ago, so embarrassing. My mother found this contract that I have drafted so that I could start a leaf raking business with my aunts and uncles. And I had like prices for the size of the yard and whatever. What's even more embarrassing is I'm pretty sure the large yard was like $1, right? So clearly I did not have a very good grasp on how much things cost. But, and this was in the 80s, but, it's funny. Like, I had a permission slip for her to sign, and I had made up like a name and incorporated it. I didn't even know what that was. Like, clearly I was destined to own businesses. And that was by far just one of dozens of things like that I would do. And I don't remember actually raking yards, because I've always wanted to be the boss and not ever have to do the dirty work. And then here I am, like, doing all the parts of my business and loving it. But anyway, so my granny, my dad's mother, she used to give us silver dollars, and she would tell us not to save them, or not to spend them rather, but to save them. And I have a massive jar full of silver dollars from like the 70s and 80s that are worth more than their dollar, but I think they hold too much emotional value for me to ever get rid of those, because it was just one of those things that I thought, okay, so that's an investment, right? I mean, you just gave me something worth something, and I'm not going to spend it because one day it's going to be worth more than this, right? Mm-hmm. And so I picked up very keenly on things that way. And I knew very early that money provided not happiness, but things to complement your lifestyle. Like, if you wanted a new bike, you had to save up for, you know what I mean? So I was very early on, I knew that you had to have money to get material things that you wanted, and you had to work very, very hard for them.
Probably the same reason why you asked that question, but it just tells so much about, why someone has maybe the habits they do today based on the memories that they have and how they grew up around money. So
absolutely.
I'm glad that you got to answer it. Now you can tell your clients to listen to the podcast and hear the answer that you always ask them. This is one of my favorites. It's kind of the definition of financial freedom or success. And I always like to compare it to some people think that, like, I've made it with money if I can ask for avocado on anything, the addition of avocado, without having to flinch and be like, oh, do I have enough money for that? Right. So what is your definition of financial success?
I think that I have 2 answers to this, okay? Because I think it comes in stages. I don't think there's not one end all be all, but the first came when my business became truly profitable and I didn't have to constantly worry about where my next client was going to come from. And I don't know exactly when that happened. It was a few years ago, but I just remember those first few years having to hustle, because when you're an entrepreneur, you eat what you kill, right? I mean, you don't make money unless you have clients coming in the door. There's not someone giving you a salary. And I remember my business was very cyclical. Like, I would bring on all these clients, I would do all their planning. And then when I'd put them into review mode, I'd be sitting there twiddling my thumbs going, okay, who's next? Oh my gosh, I have to go find more clients. And I really fought that for probably 4 or 5 years, very hard to get out of that cycle. And finally I broke it. And I think it came when I had so much business going on that I didn't have to worry. I knew that I was doing something good and that the clients would come and the money would even itself out. And so that was a huge break point for me. And I can't pinpoint exactly when. It took a little longer than I expected it to, but I'm so glad that it did. And I think that the second thing will come when my husband and I are able to give philanthropically in a more serious way. Charity work has always been a passion of mine since I was a preteen, and I had lots of time to give and started volunteering with multiple organizations. And over time, I've been able to donate time and treasure, but I'm excited for the opportunity for my husband and I to be able to do more serious things. You know, we've talked at one point, we'd love to find an at-risk student who is brilliant and doesn't have the means and maybe fund them through college and get to know them intimately and kind of be able to be their benefactor. We would love to do that. And we're not, by no means are we there yet, but we're building to that point. It's still a ways off, but I think when that happens, I mean, that's a type of fulfillment that few people don't get, right? To be able to say, you know what, you need this. We have a lot of causes very close to our hearts, and to be able to walk in and say, done, covered. And I work with donors of organizations because I do a lot of planning for them. And I work with people like that in very close contact. And I think, man, one day I'm going to be able to just say, here's $100,000. And I think that will be, I don't know, awesome.
What a great goal. And that flows perfectly into my quick and dirty Q&A. So a little bit faster paced questions, but My first one is right along those lines of what organizations, you know, you can give names and whatnot, do you like to give your time or your money to?
So I sit on the board of directors for the Junior League of Athens, and that a lot of people don't really know what the Junior League does, except for what they've seen in the help, but it's not that. So we commit to developing the potential of women and really training volunteers and then infiltrating them back into the community to go serve on boards of directors. So it's a really amazing group. I work with a group called Extra Special People based out of Watkinsville, and they provide activities year-round in camps for kids and teens and young adults with developmental disabilities. And they have after-school programs, and they do karate, and they have a swim team, and the things that they allow those children to do are things that their parents never thought in a million years that they would be able to do. So, all right, I can't even talk about them without getting emotional. So they're awesome. So I help them out with a charity banquet that they have every February called the Big Hearts Banquet. And we have grown that. I've done that for 3 years, and we have taken it from 250 guests to 750 people. And we're almost sold out for this coming February. But what that does is that funds their camps and programs throughout the summer. But they're amazing, and they're growing at such a fast speed. So I also work with the Athens Clark Heritage Foundation. Here in town, we have a lot of antebellum properties because we're in Athens, Georgia, and we're very passionate about preserving and restoring and making sure that as we develop our urban footprint, we still pay homage to that traditional architecture and restore and preserve what we can. I've also in the past worked with the Salvation Army, our women's auxiliary here in town that does that Christmas Angels program. You might be familiar when you see those people ringing the red bells at Christmas time. And then for 4 years, I fed patients at Shepherd Center in Atlanta, which is a spinal injury rehab. It's one of the best in the country. And I volunteered on the junior committee, which was also fundraising. And then for 4 years, I sat on the board of directors for the Atlanta 2-day walk for breast cancer. So I have dove into multiple issues over the course of my life, but it's so fulfilling to be able to impact an organization in a big way and say it's better off than when I came. That's very rewarding to me.
That's fantastic. You are very inspirational in that regard. I'm always curious, what is one habit that you have that relates to money that you believe has brought you success?
Aside from everything else that I find my time taken up with, my passion is traveling, and big passion is traveling. And we go somewhere once a quarter at least. And probably 9 years ago, before I had even really before that, it was way before that. It was in college. Before I even developed this cash flow planning method or process, I would take my travel money for a trip and I would put it in a separate checking account and change the name of that account online to travel. And it has allowed me to stay on budget when I'm abroad, and also motivated me to fill it up before I leave town for a trip without robbing, other accounts of mine to do that. And that one habit of just separating that money out. When you're abroad, you can make withdrawals from that account. And because ATMs usually give you the best currency exchange anyways. So I'll just make like 3 or 4 withdrawals over the course of a trip. Even if I have bank fees, maybe I pay $30 in fees, right? But when I check that balance, I don't have to discount mortgage or bills or anything. I know that is my budget for the trip. And it's so easy to stay on point that way.
That is such a great tip for anybody who wants to go traveling. Doing the separate bank accounts and naming them is one of my favorite things. It just you know what goes where. You don't have to worry about everything being in one big pot. And
yeah. Mm-hmm. And it is a big part of my cash flow planning strategies that I employ for people is separating out that money allows you to see the purpose of it very clearly. And I will tell you, we're headed to Ireland in just a couple months. I will not touch my Ireland money. For one, when I log into that bank, it says Ireland right now. You know what I mean? So if I'm even tempted to steal from that from Christmas, I will not, because one, it's my passion, but two, I very clearly can see its intent. So I'm not going to do that. And it's very motivational for my clients also to see new bathroom, right? When they want to do a renovation. I mean, it brings things into focus.
Aside from traveling, what is a guilty pleasure that you do spend your money on?
Aside from traveling? Okay, well, but I have 3. And the first one is travel, and then it's food, and it's wine. I am a huge foodie. I love food. I'm meeting some girlfriends tonight. We have an excellent food scene in Athens, and my husband would eat a burger from anywhere, right? So he's on a guy's trip this weekend. He doesn't fully appreciate the Gruyere on this burger. And so I have a group of foodie girlfriends that I can go indulge with and be like, oh my gosh, this $20 hamburger is amazing.
That's great. Love it.
Yeah, so I'm going to do that. And good wine. Oh, I love good wine. But what's bad about when you start drinking good wine is that your palate changes.
You no longer want to do the $2 chug.
I know. Oh, I couldn't. It's like vinegar. And it's not that I'm snobby and think, oh, I can't. It's literally that your taste buds have changed and you can tell the difference. And I don't know if I think maybe I've cursed myself. I wish that I could, but I can't. So, and then it's travel. I splurge when I travel. We live so frugally day to day. We do. We live so minimally. But when we travel, I have an affinity for luxury hotels and spas and so whatever. But those are my guilty pleasures. And it's all about moderation.
100%. All right. Last request is give the audience your best words of advice about money. You've already given a bunch, but any last things you have?
So be intentional with your spending. Most people articulate what's important to them and how they want to live, but I find that their spending is without plan. And it's important to sit down once a year and ask yourself if your spending for that year reflects your goals and what you said you wanted. And if not, put some easy systems in place to make sure that you can see the purposes of your money more clearly and spend with intention. That's it.
Awesome. Katie, thank you so much. How can the listeners find you?
So I have a website. It's www.stablewatersfinancial.com. STABLE, like we wish the markets would be. Waters is my last name, and financial.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Katie Waters, Katie. I also write for dailyworth.com. I write articles for them each month. So if you just type in Katie Waters Daily Worth, you'll find my profile and you can contact me through that platform also.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, thank you. This was great.
Thank you so much for checking out the Words and Money podcast, episode 6 with Katie Waters. I hope this episode really helped you figure out what insurance policies do you need, what are essential, and what maybe you could wait and defer to a later time. Please download the checklist. It has some great useful information, and check out the show notes. You'll find it at www.tesswicks.com/podcast/Katie Waters. That's KATIE Waters. You can download the checklist from there and also get Katie's contact information so you can reach out to her personally too if you have further questions about financial planning, insurance, investments, and whatnot. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and happy Valentine's Day. I'll talk to you next week.